Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to unbox and set up a new arrival in the shop. This is the Creality CR-10 Max. So this, as you can see, is a big printer. This is larger than our table here, so we'll see how we make out setting this up. This is a 450 by 450 by 470 build volume. It's basically a CR-10S Pro, but significantly larger. So these are likely support rods. Oh my goodness. Another set of 2 support rods. Oh, I'm caught. Oh wow. So we have the base and the control box, but they're connected by a set of cables here permanently. So we have to lift them out together somehow. All right, so this is the control box. Everything is integrated in the back here, at the bottom of here. This is supposed to go underneath this base frame. So we'll put that together in just a few minutes. Then we should have the gantry. Haphazardly place this here for now. I think that is it. Oh, we lost, looks like the strain relief cover there. Let's see if there's anything else. Nope, I think we're good to go there. All right. So I spun the base around so that the Y-axis motor is now at the back. So this would be the front of the printer facing you. And I kind of rotated this so that the wires are no longer twisted and tangled. So this base unit is going to sit underneath the 2 Y rails here, and it's going to bolt through 2 bolts in either rail into the top of here. Before we try to slide this under, I'm just going to move this cable out of the way so that we don't kind of crush it in the top there. Not sure what the best way to do this is, but sliding this in from the side seems like a good idea to me. There we go. So the front rail here slides in that groove where the ribbon cable was, kind of locks the whole unit in there, and then just line it from left to right so that it lines up with those holes. There we go. It's probably as close to good as it's going to get. Okay. So now let's open the box of components here and take a look. Of course, we have the assembly and instruction manual. We might take a look at that. A kilogram of PLA. The power cord. Standard kind of Ender 3 style spool holder, USB cable, your assembly tools, Allen keys, wrenches, screwdriver, and snips. And then some L brackets. These are to connect those support rods up to the top of the gantry. Some M5s and M4s screws, your micro SD to USB adapter, micro SD card, a 0.2 millimeter feeler gauge. And this little block, if you remember from the CR-10S Pro, is your little alignment block to make sure that the X-axis is even on both sides, same height on both sides and not on an angle. your standard T braces for the uprights here where they connect to the base frame, these 40/40s. Some spare nozzles and a Bowden tube coupler. And then of course your sharpen scraper. All right. So what we need are these smaller, these are the pull rod. They call them the pull rod accessory package. So we're not doing that, but we're going to need 4 screws for this base unit. So these silver ones, these M4x20s, I believe there are 5 of them in the package, but we only need 4. These are going to thread down through the 2040 rails of the Y. And if we've lined everything up, they should screw right into the threaded holes on the control box. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to address some of the changes that you would notice on this model compared to the CR-10S Pro. It has 2 Y belts. They are standard 2GT tooth belts. They look to be, maybe they're 6 millimeters, it might be 8 millimeters. I'll have to double check. But there are 2 of them, and the back stepper motor back here is attached to an extremely large bracket, but it is like a dual pole stepper motor. So there's a pole sticking out of either side. And then they have 2 sets of tooth gears powering the 2 sets of belts. So that's a nice upgrade, should help with ringing, and with such a heavy bed, a large bed moving back and forth, that could become a problem. So I like that. There's also your standard V wheels, your Delrin black wheels rolling on the sides of the 2040s here for the Y. And on the outsides, there are going to be 2 of them that have the eccentric nuts. So we'll go through making sure that all the wheels are appropriately tight. Right now I can spin them and the bed is not moving back and forth at all. So that tells me they need a little bit of adjustment. We have a couple extra wires that are hanging out of the control box here that were not connected to anything. So the Y-axis limit switch at the back here is connected. Right here we have, this is going to be for one of the Z motors. Out this side we have another one for the Z motor. And then we have, of course, the ribbon cable that was coming out of the side of the control box. This is the same kind of ribbon cable that we saw with the CR-10S Pro, and it has another separate little connector off of here. There's no Z limit switch connector because it's using a probe, in this case a BL Touch, to sense the bed, and that acts as your Z limit. So, next step will be to attach this to the base. Now, normally I would hang the printer off the edge of the table and screw in from underneath. It's already hanging off the edge of the table, and I'm not going to be able to easily orient it sideways. So I'm going to have to work with what I have, lift up the sides and painfully bolt them up through under there. They have the M5, the really long M5 screws here with the little lock washers on them. So now that they're completely bolted on, I'm going to attach the stepper motor cables. They're on the inside, so like on the underneath the bed almost. And if you are moving the bed manually like I am, just move it slowly and you should be fine. Okay. I've already reattached the strain relief cover here for the bed cable. There we go. And just checking the wheels. Okay, we'll have to adjust these wheels as well. The hot end is actually tight. There's no slop at all in there, so that one's fine. It actually might be too tight because you might almost see it on camera that it gets stuck every rotation of the wheels. So there might be a flat spot on the wheels because they were too tight and they've sat there for a while in that position. So usually loosening it can kind of cover that up and they will go back to shape over time. But in its current form, I just don't like it. It shouldn't be catching like that. They've decided to wrap the cables in this hard corrugated tube. Personally, I'm not a fan at all. I don't think there's anything wrong with the way they loosely coupled the two of them on the CR-10S Pro. They didn't use a zip tie for that. They just kind of used a soft loop. But this is what they're doing now, I guess. It is supposed to still be Capricorn tube, so you're able to go higher on the temperature, even though it's not an all metal hot end. I think Cap tube, they don't recommend above 270 or 275 or so. They do have the little collars on the couplers here to keep pressure against the tube, which should keep it firm and not sliding in and out or having any motion there. We also need to connect, of course, the ribbon cable. So it comes out of the front of the box up here, and ideally we want it, back here. I'm surprised it doesn't come out closer to the back of the box, and it locks in there just like on the 10S Pro. You have your filament runout sensor on the back. It's already pre-cabled, and then that feeds down through here. And we do have this little guy here. There is a cable buried. You won't be able to see it very well. There's a cable buried underneath here, right behind the X stepper motor, and that will connect to this guy here. There we go. Just slide it towards the back, and the two of them will just connect. And they're keyed, so they only go in one direction. There we go. Okay, so we have all of our cables connected. We need to work on the bed rollers, tension those. So we'll grab our wrench, and it's the front and rear wheel on the outer side here, and it looks like the center wheel on the inner side of this rail. So this set of wheels, the center one has an eccentric nut as well, but it's going to be almost impossible for us to reach that very well. So I'm just going to tighten the outer two ones here so that when I spin the wheel, the bed should basically move back and forth. There should be enough contact between the wheel and the rail that when I move the wheel like this, it moves the bed back and forth. And we'll just do all four corners that way. So just as I was moving it back and forth, I was looking at the bed, and it's a standard heated aluminum bed with an aluminum plate on it with this build tack kind of material that's laminated to the top aluminum plate. The top aluminum plate does come off. They've used these little swing clips here. Should be able to slide it right out the front. So this is a 24 volt DC heated bed, and it appears to be heated all the way to the edge, or at least very close to the edge. And it does have a subframe underneath there to make sure that the bed is nice and stiff. And hopefully the bed doesn't have any sag in the middle, but we'll check that in a minute. Luckily, we do have a BL Touch with auto bed leveling, so if there is any kind of sag or warp to the bed, that will compensate for that in the first few layers. We may as well do some easy parts now. Let's install the spool holder. And as much as many people hate the idea of this, I'm going to install it up here. So because the filament does feed in the side here, I'm just going to mount it closer to that side. And I guess, just so it looks nicer from the front, I'll flip this around. There we go. We already have lots of spools of filament open, so we're not going to open the one that it came with. We'll just use this partial spool here. And I've already cut the tip on a 45, feed it through the filament runout sensor, and then into the side of the extruder. Depress the lever on the extruder, kind of wiggle it back and forth, and it should find its way into the Bowden tube there. And in this case, because everything is cold, just keep pushing until it doesn't go any further. If you're doing this warm, obviously you can just push until it comes out the tip of the nozzle. There we go. Okay, so we have filament loaded. We're not going to need our USB cable right now. We should install the T-brackets for these uprights. Kind of got ahead of myself with the filament there. So unlike previous models, these T-brackets don't come with the hammer nuts. They just come with standard bolts, and the extrusions themselves are tapped. So that's a little bit easier instead of guessing if your hammer nuts have actually engaged. And only the top hole on these brackets has an associated threaded hole on the extrusion. So I'll just finger tight these for now. Okay, and then tighten them fully. And then just simply repeat the same process on the other side. So now I think we'll go ahead and install these braces. So the two of these are going to screw together using a threaded rod in the middle, and all the bits that we need are in this package we saw earlier. So two of these rods are not going to have any heads or eye bolts or anything on them, just threaded. And it will thread in one side of this. We'll do it about halfway or so, and then just going to make sure that it does thread in by holding it. There we go. Okay, so there's one. Yeah, it doesn't look like it'll actually bottom out on its own, so it would just keep threading in. So I'm only going to go, like I said, about halfway, then just hold my finger on it to make sure it is actually threading into the second half here and not just continuing to thread into the first part. Good. And then these brackets here, these are going to attach to, I think, the top. Let me just double check in the manual here. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we also need the threaded pieces with the little eye hole here. Take one of these eye bolts and just gonna see. All four pieces of these rods are the same, so they're symmetrical. Just screw these into either end. Oh, they actually want you to put an M6 nut, so one of these nuts, on the bolt before installing. This way you can lock the bolt at a certain extension. So if we wanted it to be right there, we could actually tighten this nut and it would lock that bolt in place like that. So we're going to do this on all four ends of these two pipes. So we're going to install the brackets for the supporting rods. There are two holes that are going to align like that, and we're going to thread through the bolts that came in the package with them and hammer nuts or T-nuts onto the back sides. And then with any luck, these will just bolt right on here. One little trick is you can kind of look in the side here, on this side, to see if the hammer nut has twisted and engaged. And on the end, there's just this plastic cap, and you can look through here and you should be able to see that the hammer nut is properly engaged in the rail. Okay, so that's secure. And then with these rods that we were assembling earlier, I'm just going to make sure that like each side is kind of equally unscrewed, if you will, so that they're equal length or so. And then that is going to attach to the bracket there and into the side of the extrusion down here. Now, if you don't have these lengthened enough, the edge of this rod is going to hit the top of the extrusion, and you're not going to be able to line up the center of the eye bolt with the center of the threaded center of the extrusion there. So leaving this one a little bit longer might not be a bad idea. And then this hole is threaded, so there's no nut or anything here. Take one more of these bolts, attach that to there. And we can spin this entire thing now and lengthen it by unscrewing here or shorten it as need be. And in this case, we need to shorten it. So let's screw that in. A little bit more. There we go. So now we're at a length where I'm not contacting the aluminum down here. And now I will bolt this one in as well. Everything's still just very loose though. Let's go around and tighten these up. 1, 2. And then we want to tighten those nuts that will lock it all in place. So we're going to use the same wrench that we use for the wheels, except we're just going to use the other side, the smaller side, and essentially tighten down that nut against this aluminum tube. Okay, so now that helps stiffen that up. And then we'll just repeat the same on the other side. So now when I try to shake the top of the frame, it looks like the printer's shaking, but I'm actually shaking the whole table. And that Z frame is nice and stable now. Okay, so at this point, I think we can plug it in, check the motion is all working in each direction, make sure we've connected everything correctly. We do need to make sure that we've tightened the corners on this bed. So it's extremely loose when it's shipped, and there'll be no tension on the springs on the corners. And so the bed itself will kind of just wobble around. And it's not because of those eccentric nuts, because we already know we tighten those. So make sure that there is some pre-tension on all of your screws on the corners for those springs. And you can kind of move the hot end from corner to corner and make sure that it's at least reasonably level. You could do the paper method if you want, but the BL Touch is going to take care of the rest of that for us. So the power is at the front left corner of the machine from my perspective, so I guess front right for you. Which is admittedly not the most convenient spot for it, to be honest. There we go. And then there is a power switch. Where are we here? There, right on the very front. So right off the bat, the BL Touch engaged with its couple clicks, as we're kind of used to hearing. Before I do much further, I just want to double check the Creality jingle. I just want to double check the wheels on the Z, because I don't think we've tensioned those yet. The outer two have no eccentric nut, but the inner one does. Okay, there we go. So let's just start by trying to auto home. We can see that the temperatures are already displayed, which is a good start. It beeps every time you touch it right now. I'm just going to turn the volume down. So let's go to move, and then in the center, we can just hit home. Of course, it's quiet, it's got the trinamic drivers. And it should do like a Z-safe homing in the center here with the BL Touch. It does one probe relatively quickly, a second slowly for even more accuracy. And let's just do a preheat here. Temperature, ABS or PLA, we'll choose PLA. And that has now set, you can hear the fan kick in. That's set the hot end to 195 and the bed to 45 degrees. And let's insert the SD card right here in the front of the unit. Take a look at what we have on the card there. So there's only one file, it's just elephant. So we're going to print an elephant. select the file, and hit print. All right, we're back after multiple hours. We've printed 3 items, as you can see here. One of them was the test print that was on the SD card from Creality. As kind of usual, they used a raft underneath it, which in my opinion, it's not really needed. We get good bonding to this surface. So there's some marring on the bottom of the feet. There's some marring on the undersurface here where there was some supports that kind of bonded to it. But other than that, it looks good. There's no kind of layer shift. There's no signs of Z wobble or anything like that. It's kind of exactly what I would have expected. Then we sliced up using a standard CR-10S Pro profile we happen to have in Cura, and sliced up one of these whistles. It's supposed to be really loud. Yep, it's loud. So it works, looks good. Again, no issues to speak of whatsoever. And those were both printed in the standard red filament that they sent us. And then we sliced up a vase in vase mode, and this is where we noticed some problems. So as you can see, and as I mentioned before, the printer is so big it's hanging off the front and the back of our work surface here. If I slide it a little bit further forward, I can at least get the back rubber feet on. It's on a little bit of an angle forward like that, but at least it's stable, or as stable as the table is. So between the table shaking and the fact that the printer may not have had those rubber feet on the back on the table surface, both the table and printer are going to shake back and forth. Now I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but that's just the nature of the situation we're in. So our vase showed some defects, and it's on every layer the whole way up, and it's equal. It doesn't look like any kind of Z banding. We should have seen that in the other models as well if that were the case. So this is likely due to the vibrations as the very large bed is moving back and forth. Everything's wobbling and causing these kind of striations, I guess you'd call them, in the surface here. Actually, you can feel it from a texture perspective that they're not, the layers are not nicely stacked on one another. But other than that, no other issues. I'd like to reprint this one after we get this big guy on a much larger surface. So hopefully you found all of that useful. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment down below. And remember to like and subscribe to get notified when we upload more videos like this. Thanks for watching.